Regional Australia has the capacity to store enormous amounts of CO2 in the soil, but no one has yet joined the dots. This failure has seen a fragmented response to the federal government's emissions reduction scheme, with that evolving program missing major opportunities because of a lack of understanding, expertise and quantity of scale. RDA Orana has constructed a simple and inexpensive framework which aims to bring those components together and achieve multiple goals in the process, including sequestering huge amounts of CO2 into the soil, turning waste product into energy to power regional industry, thus turning primary production costs into positive income streams, create new markets and opportunities for the nation's freight transport companies, such as Australia's first carbon-neutral trucking company, Dubbo's Transforce, drive the take-up of multiple innovative crops which sequester CO2, improve soil fertility and escalate farmgate profits to create local processing and manufacturing opportunities, trial breakthroughs in CO2 soil sequestration innovation and technology which perform cost-effectively at a landscape scale, such as a carbon soil inoculant which has shown incredible carbon gains during laboratory and field research, connect regional industries with international markets such as green jet fuels and biochar to manufacture the nation's steel. A measurable project overseen by university professors which utilises Peter Andrews' natural sequence farming, Col Seiss's pasture cropping techniques and innovations in multi-species cover cropping systems to draw carbon from the atmosphere into the soil. Bring together state and federal resources into a one-stop shop to drive regional wealth creation. Devising a regional template of the project so the Orana model can be replicated across Australia. Industrial hemp sequesters 1.393 kilos of CO2 for every kilogram of plant material, but a complex set of circumstances has held the industry back across the globe. This incredible figure is what grabbed the attention of Environment Minister Greg Hunt. Now, with many other countries pursuing aggressive research and agronomic trials, RDA Orana has brought the fragmented hemp industry together and begun awareness raising amongst politicians to ensure they understand the opportunities of this versatile crop. iHemp has huge potential to sequester carbon on an ongoing basis, and the establishment of a viable industry will create larger farmgate profits and the prospects of local and regional processing and manufacturing jobs. Many innovative natural fibres far outperform Australia's current mainstream crops. The OCP hopes the Carbon Initiative will spur new industries which will not only sequester CO2 instead of creating it, but also drive a new era of profitability for the nation's farmers. Building homes from iHemp would also see the housing industry sequestering huge amounts of CO2.
Another advantage of hempcrete is that it's carbon sequestering. You remember before I said that our goal is to be carbon neutral. Well, hempcrete actually sequesters carbon. Let me tell you how it does that. First of all, any cellulose material, wood for example, or hemp, takes carbon in during its life cycle, and usually when it decays, it lets it back into the atmosphere. If you take that plant and then put it into a wall, for example in hempcrete, then that carbon is now sequestered in the wall and not becoming part of climate change. So the hempcrete in this building, this one building alone, will sequester 20,000 pounds of carbon. That's a pretty big accomplishment.
Creating a new industry based on sustainable building products could cut huge amounts of CO2 emissions from Australia's total. The centrepiece of the project is the creation of a regional biohub to utilise the energy from waste products and burn them to provide gas and electricity for Australia's largest sheep meat abattoir, Fletcher's International. The waste is turned into power, the residues become valuable biochar, with advanced discussions already underway with a major domestic steel manufacturer to take the finished product. This would obviate the need to import specialist coking coal from China, as well as slash greenhouse emissions from the manufacturing process by up to 35%. Likewise, talks are well advanced to supply bio-crude to end customers to use in the jet fuel industry, with airlines under enormous pressure to reduce their greenhouse footprints. Extensive research has also identified a need for biochar mixed with organic matter such as chicken litter to act as locally produced agricultural fertiliser, cutting down on greenhouse emissions through an international supply chain while adding carbon to the soil and improving the ground's water holding capacity. A group of local farmers has expressed interest in buying into a facility to process and market this local biofertiliser. RDA is also looking at opportunities to power a proposed zirconia rare earths mine just south of Dubbo with scrubby pine regrowth. Drilling down into some of the details shows numerous concurrent opportunities. Scott Toole's Toongai farm, overrun with white cypress, was used in trials to produce biochar. Data from these trials clearly shows the infestation is harming the biodiversity of his property, his economic productivity, and it sits as a wasted resource.
To me, it's a great way of turning a resource into another product that we can use on the place and also gain some income out of. I look at these trees behind us here, and the biggest trouble is that the carbon is locked up in the trees at the moment. They're no longer sequestering any carbon. The soil is losing carbon. We're losing biodiversity. I think at this stage we just need to turn this resource back into something which is more profitable. It's an asset which we could, if we wanted to, just get in and bulldoze it and destroy the whole lot and burn it and grow grass. But to me, there's a great asset in white cypress pine into the future for building, and the resource itself is good for just as biomass and turning it into biochar or some other gases, electricity, you name it.
Michael Longhurst has a practical agriculture and scientific background and spent years with the Central West CMA investigating biomass and biochar potential. He says don't be fooled by the appearance of vegetation. This regrowth outcompetes grasses and scrubby understory, leaving the topsoil free to be washed away by water or blown away by wind.
It's sort of a green desert because the woody weeds outcompete the native grasses, and it's just out of balance. So native birds can't fly through this stuff. They can't land on the ground, right? They can't eat the grasses that are not there or the seeds in the grasses, right? And this is at a good period at the moment, and this is just rain. So we've got a tiny amount of grass trying to compete with vastly spreading woody weeds. At least 20 million hectares of woody weeds like this in New South Wales. And farmers have been given permission to clear up to 4 million hectares so far. But the problem is the cost. They can't afford to do it. The cost of treating these woody weeds exceeds the value of the farm. So how do we look at this differently and call this a resource? We just need to make that mind shift. Weeds can be turned into a resource. And how do we do that? Right, we take these weeds, and there's new pyrolysis machines or roasting ovens. I won't use a technical term. So we have roasting ovens that are like the inside shipping containers, all technically designed so that they're controllable. And in 4 hours, we can turn these woody weeds into this charcoal product, right? So basically it's a form of charcoal, but it's made at a specific temperature for a specific time. This wood's been roasted for 4 to 5 hours inside an oven. We're now at the point where, as well as getting this out of it, converting this into this, right, which is crystalline carbon, which goes back in the soil, and like it would have thousands of years ago, there was a lot more charcoal in the soil. Aboriginal land management practices used to include burning these weeds, so we had more kangaroos. Here's some kangaroo poo. So this is how the Aboriginals managed the land, right? They managed it by burning this stuff under practices that they came up with over thousands of years. So they had kangaroos, so they had something to eat. So now what we're looking at doing is doing this again, but doing it with some technology so that it's far more controllable and that we can provide a whole new income layer through the agricultural industry. We can make, so this gets turned into biochar, which we crush down and put back in the soil. We let it mix in with the animal wastes, so sheep and cattle and kangaroo manure can restore the fertility of the soil. And guess what we can also do? We can make gas. Why are we going to coal seam gas when we've got it above the ground? The smoke that comes out of this, right? The smoke that comes out of this, I'm not going to start a fire, but the smoke that comes out of this can be converted into a gas that can run gas engines, we can make electricity, and we can restore vast tracts of land in Western New South Wales, sequester carbon back in the soil, and guess what? Guess what it's complementary to? There's a big lump of coal, right? So if we're putting CO2 up into the atmosphere from this coal, which is pretty much the same as this biochar, then we put this up and we pull it down, so plants pull CO2 out of the atmosphere, a colourless gas, trees are 50% carbon, we then roast it in an oven, we end up with biochar that's crystalline, that can go back in the soil, and we're starting to work towards a balance.
Leading the region when it comes to creating innovative, sustainable job opportunities for Aboriginal people, James Riley is excited about the prospect of his people working on country, helping to regenerate the soils their ancestors tread on so lightly.
For us, I guess, essentially, it's around jobs. There is a lack of industry in this region. We've got per capita, the highest population of Aboriginal people, and we're actually in the age bracket from sort of 18 to 27. It'll make up about 30% of the workforce in the next 5 years. So we're looking at opportunities. It's an amazing opportunity here.
Already his company ICANN has taken over a former forestry nursery and has combined funding from training providers and local land services to get groups cleaning up the 170,000 hectares of travelling stock routes in the Central West LLS, which has just one employee tasked for that job.
Essentially, we talk about it all the time. We don't get opportunity. I guess modern day Aboriginal people have been ostracised and marginalised and put into estates, into housing commission estates, and the opportunities to get out on country and actually do hands-on work, not just walk through the bush and we can do that anytime, but what they're doing now is actually contributing, and that contribution to them is huge. It makes a massive difference to their everyday life. It gives them a lot of self-satisfaction. They get pride in what they do. We see a change in our group. We've had them for about 3 months now. And from guys that wouldn't say boo, when we get them out in the bush now, it's just a laugh a minute. They're doing something, constructive, but they're also learning, and we learn as well. I mean, we learn off them, we learn off each other, and I guess essentially we're learning off the land. So
he sees the Orana carbon project dovetailed into the broader Emissions Reduction Fund strategy as a way to help wean his people off welfare, improve soils and biodiversity, and carry out work at a commercial profit which government agencies can't afford. That adds up to potentially positive and far-reaching unintended consequences never envisaged by the architects of the ERF.
We've looked into those concepts, I guess, concepts around how do we better manage the land, how do we actually get the opportunity to do that, and I guess having a commercial or commercially viable activity that we can do in conjunction with the work the boys love doing, really it makes sense. We don't have the resources to just go out and start up a brand new company and buy a $400,000 machine. But if we could have, the technology that we could learn on and we can implement at a local level, get it right, find ways and means to actually sell that product or get some income from that product, there's no reason why we couldn't have that $400,000 machine, and we could make a massive difference to the travelling stock routes, to private landholders, to local councils, to roads and maritime services who look after, the corridors on the highways. Everyone sees the signs; they're rampant with weed. If we can fix the understory, I think that you'll find those other little issues and the problems that come with it, they'll fix themselves as well. So.
Another unintended consequence is already paying dividends. Totally on their own initiative, the trainees have begun collecting rare seeds, often only found on the relatively biodiverse stock routes, and are now propagating them at the nursery for future replantings on site and for sale. That's just a partial snapshot of one prong demonstrating the huge diversity and synergies of the proposed Orana carbon project. RDA Orana believes such an inclusive and holistic project, overseen by established and recognised RDA governance systems, could be transplanted to regions across the country. RDA is working in close partnership with many organisations including Macquarie 2100 and Little River Landcare, Renewed Carbon, Carbon Farmers of Australia, local land services and local councils, drawing on existing resources and expertise to ensure a minimum quadruple bottom line outcomes for those who pay the taxes to fund schemes such as the ERF. It's all about looking at the ERF in a new light, working innovatively to leverage the funding so the core ERF criteria are met while ensuring other areas of the environment, economy and society also receive manifold benefits. The OCP would also concentrate numerous cutting-edge sub-projects in a tight geographical location, making it cost-effective for ERF staff to monitor, coordinate, as well as conduct training and awareness raising. The Orana Carbon project is mooted as a flagship proposal which could deliver major benefits to regions across the nation along with the overall economy. It could stand as a shining light as to what could be achieved by RDAs gathering diverse and inclusive groups of stakeholders from across community and engaging them in the process, using their structures and expertise to guide each region towards a new destiny. Orana RDA also believes it has the capacity and unique brief to demonstrate the importance and relevance of direct action to mainstream Australia and motivate regions across the country to work collaboratively to harness the best outcomes driven from a local level.